Don't give up on your sourdough if you're ending up with just a few little spots in it that you're like, oh, it's just not cooked all the way. I didn't trust my thermometer and I was like, it's been in there long enough, it's gotta be done. It should have gone just another few minutes. If your bread is getting any spots like this, it means you need to use a thermometer so that you can tell if the inside of your loaf is done baking. Trying to tell if a loaf is done just by going off of what it looks like on the outside, that's not the best method because sometimes the outside can cook way, way faster and it looks very dark, but that internal temperature of the loaf is just not all the way up to where it needs to be. So when you're using a thermometer, here's what I encourage you to do. If needed, pull the whole loaf out of the oven, put your thermometer all the way down to the bottom of the loaf, then pull it halfway up so that it's in the middle of the loaf. And you want the thermometer to quickly rise to 200 degrees. If it doesn't quickly go to 200 degrees, then put your loaf back in the oven. If mine reads 180 degrees, I give it 20 more minutes. But that's my oven. Every oven is going to cook your loaf differently. So if yours kind of slowly gets to 180 degrees and it's just inching up a little bit, put it back into the oven and set the timer for 10 more minutes. Check the internal temperature of the loaf again. And if it's quickly up to 200, then take it out of the oven. Now, if the top of your loaf is looking a little bit too dark and you're concerned that you're like, it's looking so dark, but the inside isn't finished baking, there's a couple things you could do. You could put the lid back onto your Dutch oven to just protect the top of it, or you could put a piece of foil on the rack just above your loaf to protect it from getting dark. Especially if you're doing a sandwich loaf, I will use foil a lot of times if it's looking a little bit too dark, but it still needs to keep going and cooking in for the internal temperature. Then put that piece of foil on the rack just above your loaf and keep your loaf cooking. If you take it out and you think, oh, it'll finish baking out of the oven, it won't. You're going to end up with that gummy center and you're going to be bummed because at that point, there's really not much you can do to fix it except just heavily toast it. Once your loaf has hit that 200 degrees, take it out of the pan, take it out of the loaf pan, and get it onto a cooling rack so that it can fully cool. It really only needs to sit there and cool for about an hour. You don't need to let it sit overnight. It's okay. You should be able to cut into it within an hour, or if you put your hand on it, there should be just only the slightest amount of warmth coming from it. It's so lovely to cut fresh bread. So enjoy the fresh bread. If you're cooking it all the way up to temperature, then it shouldn't have any problem with you cutting it. Now, a little reminder, if you are doing any inclusions with your bread, let's say you're putting pesto, or you're gonna do a chocolate spread, or raisins, or you name it, just remember that those inclusions change the way that the bread bakes, and sometimes it makes it take longer to bake because it's putting more moisture into the bread. So make sure that you check that internal temperature, especially if you're doing the inclusions, because you don't want to take it out and then you have like a doughy raisiny part. So check that internal temp, and if you've been checking the internal temp of yours and it has been hitting 200 degrees and it still is just not coming out fluffy, if it's still really dense and just kind of gummy in the middle, then I say we go back to the very beginning of when you're mixing up your dough. It might have something to do with either that it's getting mixed too much. Number two, are you allowing the dough to rest together before you incorporate the salt? That's another thing, and I'll put a link to a video down below that explains why you wait to incorporate the salt. Another thing is that it could be that your kitchen climate needs different ratios for your recipe. And here's the cool thing about sourdough baking. You are allowed to adjust how much flour or how much water or liquid you put into your recipe because every kitchen climate is going to react. The sourdough, I should say, is going to react different in your kitchen than it does in mine. So if your bread is kind of dense, a little gummy, it's just not coming out fluffy, then I suggest that you add 50 grams more flour to your recipe. And if you're using our everyday dough recipe, just add an additional 50 grams so that your dough is not overly sticky. If your dough is overly sticky, it will make it harder for your bread to fully rise and bake because it has so much moisture to get out of it. So I give you permission. You are allowed to play with the ratios. Make sure you have a thermometer, and before you finish baking it, you stick that thermometer all the way in so it hits the bottom, pull it out just a little bit so that you can test the middle of the loaf, and it should read 200 degrees. It should quickly go up to 200 degrees. Now, here's what happened. Real life. I had it in the oven. It was taking longer. I had to go because our son needed to go to tennis. And I told my husband, I think it's gonna be done. Just go ahead and pull it out. Well, it's not Aaron's fault. I didn't tell him to check the temperature, and it clearly needed to go a little bit longer. But that's the beautiful thing about baking, is that you get to figure these things out, and we're here cheering you on. I'm putting all sorts of fun links down in the description below, our favorite bread knife, the thermometer that we use, and links to our full sourdough playlist. Come and bake with us. We love breaking the rules. Shh, don't tell everybody, but I do. I break all the rules, and still I make delicious bread because guess what? Sourdough is so forgiving, and that's my goal, is to encourage you to fill your table with the most delicious invitations for your people to come and gather. Whether it's sourdough, or you're mixing up a fresh jam, or maybe you're simmering a soup, whatever it is, we want to encourage you to fill your table. It's a worthy endeavor.